We're back with another Bringing the Word. We're here with Pastor Paul L. Starks of Greater Love Reformed Baptist Church, and we are here and we're going to discuss a hot button topic right now, very, very, very important topic that's really raging throughout every community, not just the black community right now, but the black community is being hit possibly the hardest by this. The evidence is in the death rate. Right now, 1 in 4 African Americans are killed inside the womb. That is larger than the numbers of deaths of cancer, heart disease, guns, suicide, murders, all together. That is since Roe v. Wade in 1974. We are up to 60 million babies murdered now. Infants, the unborn. Now, I will read something, but first, let me say hi to Pastor Paul. How you doing?
Good morning. How's it going?
All right. Now, as you can see, we're going into a hot button issue.
Yes.
I'm going to read a verse that's in the Bible, and if you can give me a what is this verse talking about in about 2 minutes, and then I'm going to ask you a couple series of questions.
Sure.
And the verse is coming from Leviticus chapter 20, and it says, "The Lord spoke to Moses, saying, Say to the people of Israel, any one of the people of Israel or of the strangers who sojourn in Israel, who gives any of his children to Molech, shall surely be put to death. The people of the land shall stone him with stones. I myself will set my face against that man and will cut him off from among his people, because he has given one of his children to Molech, to make my sanctuary unclean and to profane my holy name. And if the people of the land do at all close their eyes to that man when he gives one of his children to Molech, and do not put him to death, then I will set my face against that man and against his clan, and will cut them off from among their people, him and all who follow him, whoring after Molech." Now, a couple things. Can you explain who and what Molech is? And I'll describe one of the ways what they did with Molech, and I will explain how this connects with the topic of abortion. But first, can you give us some background on this verse?
Israelites were to move into the land of Canaan, and one of the aspects that they will encounter is the deities of the Canaanites. So the deities of the Canaanites, one of the deities of the Canaanites was Moloch. And one of the issues that they would encounter was the religious rituals of the gods of the Canaanites. And one of the rituals that the gods of the Canaanites had was the sacrificing of their children. They would kill their children and offer them to the god Moloch, which is a false god, of course. And so God warned Moses to let them know that this was a horrible crime, to kill children and to give their babies as a sacrifice to the false god of the Canaanite deities. And one of the things that he emphasized tremendously was the element of killing babies. Killing babies was an abomination before the Lord, and that he made it very clear that when people killed babies, in fact, God saw that as them killing human beings, and said that their lives would have to be taken away. In fact, if they didn't take the lives of these people, God would hold the nation responsible for the element of allowing such a horrible and heinous crime of killing babies to exist. So God was very much against any element of them sacrificing children to the false god of the Canaanites.
Now, ironically, this is what I want to also point out. Moloch was a demonic demon god, which is a nothing, is a figment of their imagination, yet demonically controlled. They would take a child, raise him up over their heads, take him to this statue that was built, that was really a furnace. At the whole bottom of the inside of the furnace were the flames. They would take the child, lift him above their heads, drop them into the furnace, which had what appeared to be arms held out. The baby would fall and roll inside this stone furnace or clay furnace, fall into the bottom, burn to death. What they would do, so they would not have to hear the child's screams and cries, they would sing and dance louder.
Right.
Now, ironically, let me give you a parallel. At abortion clinics, when an unborn child is cut to pieces and killed, they usually take them off in biohazard bags, take them to a place, and if they don't extract from the child body parts necessary for medical use in their mind, what they do is they burn the child.
Right.
ironically, it essentially is the exact same practice. Now, you touched on another point and said that essentially God says you're killing a human being. Ironically, in Psalms 139, verse 13 through 16, it says, "You formed my inward parts. You knitted me together in my mother's womb. I praise you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Wonderful are your works. My soul knows it very well. My frame was not hidden from you when I was being made in secret, intricately woven in the depths of the earth. Your eyes saw my unformed substance. In your book were written, every one of them, the days that were formed for me, when as yet there was none of them." So here we clearly, what I believe is we're clearly seeing a picture of God through the prophet David, prophet and king and priest David, giving you an idea of not only, praising God for what he's done for him, but also revealing God creating every child, every human being, numbering their days on this earth, as well as creating them in the womb, giving us obvious knowledge.
Yeah, this is a very difficult concept in the culture in America where we have assumed that human beings are not created beings that are infants or fetuses. We actually believe the United States has legalized an element of killing human species because they believe that they're not fully formed yet. And this is in direct contrast to what God says. God has never said that human beings are formed at a certain amount of months or a certain amount of time frame. That's a concept that only humans have come up with.
Now, would that not be a direct violation of the sixth commandment? You shall not murder.
You shall not murder, right, exactly. Because God sees the species of human beings, that they're species at conception in which he's forming. Humans somehow in America have thought that they are not being formed as human beings to a certain amount of time. And so scientists have come up with some odd idea that they're going to determine when a human being is going to be a human being.
So let me ask you a question. So essentially, God charges the man and the woman with murder for every abortion.
Yes, abortion is definitely murder.
Okay.
Whether America, Europe, or anybody else sees it as murder, according to the law of God, it actually is murder.
Now, this is not to...
You're murdering a species that he is creating in the womb. Our understanding of creation is we think because two human beings get together and have sex and a baby comes about, that somehow is not a human being. And we've made the human being. We've made human beings because we put some sperm and eggs together. But actually, God is in charge of every created being. And when man takes liberty to kill these beings, because they say, well, the child's going to come out with Down syndrome, I'm going to kill it. The child's going to come out with a birth defect, I'm going to kill the child. God doesn't look at these babies as being babies that are deformed. He looks at them as human beings.
Okay, and
that's not how America sees it. America says, well, these are deformed species, so we have a right to kill them.
yes,
Because they have some kind of defect or birth defect.
and we use the premise of choice.
Right, we use the premise of choice, and so when we say, well, science has determined that they're not worth anything, so we now can kill them because they have Down syndrome.
Okay, and now the hard part is, well, the Bible says, okay, and that is our standard. That's why we always resort to the Bible. It says in Revelation chapter 21, verse 8, "But as for the cowardly, the faithless, the detestable, as for murderers, the sexually immoral," which happens to a lot of times, sexual immorality is connected with abortion, "sorcerers, idolaters, and all liars, their portion will be in the lake that burns with fire and sulfur, which is the second death." It's proclamation of hell. Now, let me ask you a question.
Sure.
A lot of people don't understand certain things. Now, I'm just pointing out a few scientific facts I've come to run into the information for, and it was startling to me. Some abortifacients, okay, birth control, it does not stop the connecting of the sperm and the egg.
Right.
Therefore, once it joins, life,
Right.
according to the Bible, is life. It's not an it at this point.
Right.
He or she, just too small, just very
Now,
small.
for a human,
Now-
I'm going to cut you off for 1 second.
Okay.
Humans don't think that way. So a human being doesn't see the conception of an egg and the sperm coming together as a human being.
That's right.
So they grasp the concept based on a scientific model of them thinking that they have a knowledge above God.
Which means there's not a biblical worldview.
Right, it's not a biblical worldview. it's a secular worldview in which science becomes the predominant concept in which they grasp.
All
And,
right.
and that becomes the truth. That becomes their
Their
truth.
truth.
Right.
Okay. So then let me ask you this. Now,
Oh.
once that happens, there are abortifacients out there, certain types of birth control. It doesn't stop that. Ironically, what it does is, once it does fertilize, it kills the child. Now, let's do a little math here.
Okay.
A woman has 12 period cycles. She's on, let's say, a 5-year abortifacient type thing, or just receiving a shot every so much time to remain, without being pregnant.
Okay.
So let's say in 5 years, 60 eggs. Let's say she has sex each month, at least once.
Right.
That would be 60 killed children. Just as a thought, God is perfect, holy, and just. Does he have the right to judge the woman and that man, or men, on these dead children?
That's a very, very it's a complex question philosophically, because you have to view 2 points. A, you're viewing is the concept of them knowingly or not knowing that what they're doing is wrong.
Okay.
Okay. And B, the concept of the idea of whether or not birth control is wrong or right. So let's take the first scenario. Let's say, for instance, that they know that this particular thing is wrong. But let's add another scenario to this particular component. I don't have a lot of time left, so we'll probably have to continue this. But let's add a component that they don't believe that this aspect of control is wrong or right. So by that standard, that would be true. They could say, hey, this is something that you caused the child to be killed. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. Now, there may be someone who says, well, I didn't know that. Okay, that particular thing happened. And then you say, hey, you didn't know that. I don't know if you're particularly guilty of murder, because here's something that you just didn't know because you didn't know this was taking place.
So would this be where God's grace could be holding?
Right, his grace would say, well, I can't judge it. Now, there may be someone who says, I use this in the sense of ignorantly, and then God's grace will say, yeah, I understand that. There's some people who deliberately say, hey, I know this can kill a child, and then I'm still going to do it because of blah, 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 blah. So God will say, hey, and this is something that's beyond our understanding. He may, of course, address a particular issue and say, hey, this person did this particular thing wrong, and they knowingly know it was wrong.
All right, Pastor Paul, our time is up, but the next couple questions are going to be some serious thought questions. First of all, just as a preview of what type of questions we're going to be dealing with, the abolitionist movement.
Yes.
And one of the abolitionist practices, which is to go in front of churches that are near abortion clinics that are not active in fighting against abortion, they will picket and protest in front of that church on a Sunday.
Okay.
That's a great topic to talk about.
Let's
We're going
talk
to be
about
discussing that. We're going to be discussing abortion in the African American community. We're going to be discussing, is abortion okay for a person that is raped, for a woman that is raped? Is
very
abortion
controversial.
okay when you know and have pretty much as clear evidence as you can that there's going to be problems with the child? We have a lot of good questions about this topic. This is a multi-part Bringing the Word. Thank you, guys. Be back with us in just a moment.